Hello, Collierville, and welcome to Book Talk. I'm Jessica Roberts, and this is the show where stories come to life, pages turn, and our imaginations soar. Whether you're a casual reader or a literary enthusiast, we've got something just for you. Each week, we'll dive into the world of books, exploring exciting new releases, revisiting beloved classics, and even sometimes introducing you to the authors behind the words. I'm excited to welcome our very first guest on Book Talk, the author of Nemesis, who explores the complexities of the human psyche and personal growth in her captivating writing. Today's guest is local author Katherine Bailey, the talented author of Nemesis. Katherine Bailey is known in the publishing world for her unconventional ideas, as well as pushing the boundaries of societal norms. She believes storytelling is an art that sparks spirited human connection. Kathy said although it took her some time, she's finally tapped into her most fulfilling passion, writing. Kathy was born in Memphis and for most of her life has lived in DeSoto County, Mississippi, just across the state line, but now lives in Collierville. She is the proud mother of 5 successful adult children and currently is working in the chiropractor industry, but she wants to pursue writing full-time. She joins us today to talk about her first novel, Nemesis. Kathy, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So as we begin, I want to talk first about why you wanted to be an author and why did you feel the need to write a story?
Well, I think being a parent, you want to pass on the wisdom that you've learned to your children. You kind of hope to spare your children from any mistakes that you've made, and sometimes they don't always want to listen to that or whatever, and so and then also I was working with some younger people, and I just wanted, when I heard their stories, sometimes I could see just different things that that maybe I could help them with, and but they're not ready to receive it sometimes, because most of the time people just have to learn and grow and make their own mistakes. But one day it occurred to me, just write some of the lessons that you've learned and some of the wisdom that you have learned just from like the school of hard knocks,
Yeah.
And so I think that is kind of what inspired me to write down some things.
Yeah, and reading is such a good tool for that, like learning stuff through reading of other people's experiences, and that's
Right.
just been, historically what people use for books anyways.
That's right.
So let's talk then about being an author. Has it always been your dream to be an author, or is this something that you just recently decided to kind of pick up?
It's something that recently just kind of came to me, even though when I was in community college, I had some classes in writing, well, English, and you have to do a lot of writing in that, and I really enjoyed that, and I excelled in that class, but it hadn't fully developed in my mind at that point to write, to write like a big story.
And it is a big story.
Oh, it
so
is. It is.
Let's talk about then your book Nemesis. What essentially is kind of like if we were your elevator pitch, if you had 30 seconds to tell me what the book kind of was about, what would you tell people?
Oh goodness, 30 seconds. Oh, I don't know if I can do that.
Okay, well just kind of like a short summary.
Okay, well, it kind of all came about because my daughters both moved to Memphis, and one of them was living downtown and the other was living in East Memphis, and I was petrified that they moved to Memphis because we had always lived in DeSoto County.
And just like based on crime.
Based on crime.
Okay.
Based on crime. And, all my life I sort of heard, Memphis is dangerous and all that, but it never stopped me when I was younger, to do things in Memphis. But I don't know, something about my daughters moving to Memphis just put me on high alert. And so my oldest daughter, she asked me, she said, "Mom, just move to East Memphis over here. This is a nice little neighborhood." And so kind of against my better judgment, I did that. I bought this house and I renovated it, and it was so adorable. I mean, this little house, a lot of people renovate the homes, the older homes over there, because they were built in the 1920s, and so they don't have a lot of the upgraded things. So I did that, and so the very first night that I moved in, I heard gunshots, and I was mortified, because I have never felt unsafe before, but those gunshots were very near to the street that I was living on, and so that prompted me to just, I don't know, it just lit a fire inside of me, because I didn't like living in fear. And I started following this Stop Memphis Crime Facebook page, and some other pages, the local, I think it was the Neighborhood Watch, Facebook page, and I was just shocked at all of the crime that was reported daily, and a lot of people were posting little short videos from their Ring camera at activity that was going on at their home during the night. And most of the people that I talked to about it in the neighborhood, they were like, you just got to keep your head on a swivel. It's no big deal. Just be careful. And I'm thinking, that went against everything within me to hear somebody say that we need to get accustomed to that. And so I really began hyper-focusing on the crime, and then that led me to just following the victims of the crime. And one of the president of the Memphis Chamber of Commerce, Phil Trineri, he was a well-known businessman, and part of his job was to attract local business to Memphis, and he was murdered. He was murdered, and I mean, that story just, it just broke my heart. And then it was one after another that I began looking up. There was another man, Philip Godwin, who I believe is from the Piperton area. He was downtown and just visiting one of the local breweries, and I think it was before Christmas time one year, and there was some commotion outside where a couple was trying to come into the brewery, and someone was trying to attack them. And so he went outside to try to help with the situation, and someone called the police, and while the police were on their way, he kind of followed the man that was trying to attack them, and he ended up getting murdered. He got murdered trying to help these two people. And I mean, it's just heartbreaking. And there were so many young women in Midtown who was just out coming home. I think a young girl was Mallory Morgan. And, I just began to weep over the fact of someone being murdered in Memphis, and how, that would affect the parents of these people, or the family members. And so it just became, I don't know, the story just grabbed me. And, although there are people trying to make changes in Memphis, it's not always easy when you're trying to, deal with the law, and it's hard to make changes. But as you may or may not know, a lot of times when these criminals are picked up, they're released on their own recognizance the very next day or the very same day. And so it just seemed like a perpetual cycle. And it just began weighing on me. Okay, we need some out-of-the-box thinking to make some real changes. But then also, it leads back to what makes young people or older people live a life of crime? What brings them to the point where they feel like it's okay to, with force, take something from another person, or rob a store, or use fear with guns to rob a house or whatever. And so I just began to explore all of those things, and I began studying like just the government of Memphis, and the city council and the sheriff and the chief of police and the criminal justice system, and I just began looking at all that. And so I don't know, this story just sort of emerged, and it was really my way of just raising a flag that we're in trouble here. And that year, Memphis was the #1 in crime in the whole United States. #1.
Yeah, we're statistically always at the top of those lists.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another thing, I was a paint rep before. I was working another job, and so I was out a lot, going to customer sites and everything, job sites. And one day I was out, and I passed by this vehicle that was coming in the opposite direction, and they had rifles, AKA automatic rifles, hanging out of their windows, and they passed me. And that just gripped me with fear. And again, I think it was sort of, I was also enraged that, why do we need to allow this? Why, do we need to live like this? And if you're not in the city of Memphis, you're not really aware.
Right.
You're not really aware of what's going on. And I know this is a very heavy topic, but in the end of the book, I mean, I'm trying to tie it all together to bring some hope, because, again, how do you address these problems? And you really have to think out of the box, to get a person who has lived a life of crime to change and be a productive member of society. I mean, if they get arrested and go to jail, is that automatically going to change them?
Right.
No, I don't think so. It needs to be more than that.
Yeah. And that's a whole side topic of like, what are jails and prisons for? Because they're supposed to be rehabilitating people, and it seems to be just the same people that we're cycling through.
Exactly.
So, but that's a whole different topic for another day.
I know.
Okay, so a book about crime in Memphis,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you've researched it pretty deep and have it kind of a solid story then.
Yeah.
So tell me then the title, Nemesis, Life is But a Bad Dream. What does that mean?
Well, it's like, if you can see on the book, Nemesis, underneath it's got the word Memphis. And it's like Memphis has become a nemesis.
Of itself.
Yes.
Yes.
It's become a nemesis, but Memphis has got such a rich history of music, of just working hard people, developing a community. But, over time, we've come so far from that, and we've come so far to the point of being #1 or in the top 10 of crime. And can we change that? What's it going to take to turn that around and make it a desirable location again, make it a safe place again? Is it possible?
So what I'm hearing is your book not only is a crime story, but it's kind of, like a self-actuality of people of Memphis kind of recognizing what's going on in their own city.
Yes.
I'm excited to read it. So why, we talked a little bit about why you set your story in Memphis is because of the crime and stuff. And so that was a deliberate choice. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like I mentioned before, I stumbled into it after hearing the gunshots at the house I was at, and, just not feeling safe. And then, I was trying to warn my daughters, I mean, they were, in their late 20s, and, they just wanted to live life. They had their friends, and there's a lot of cool restaurants downtown and in Midtown, going to the Grizzlies game and just different things. And, they didn't want to hear their mom talking about crime all the time. And, but I was so fearful for them, and you don't want to, you don't want to cause people to live in fear, but at the same time, you need to have a healthy awareness of your surroundings. And there's so many places where people go in Midtown, downtown, where there's a lot of crime, and
Right.
it could come up on you unexpectedly, and you can never let your guard down. So my daughters, you know, like I said, they wanted to just be free and live, you know, live freely and go to the cool restaurants and just not live in fear. And that should be all right. That should be all right. But the crime touched both of them a little bit. My one daughter, who was living downtown, she lived in a gated apartment community, and she got home late one night after midnight, and she parked her car and she went upstairs, and within 20 minutes her car got stolen. There was 5 young men who jumped the fence of that apartment complex, got in her car, and was able to start it, and they left the apartment complex within 5 or 10 minutes. And it was captured on video. And that unnerved me for her, because if she had been out there, I'm sure they had guns.
Yeah.
And so anyway, another thing, she just got her car paid for. She had just made her last payment on that car, and I was outraged by that. And so then, shortly after that happened, my other daughter, who lived in East Memphis, she, you know, everyone has a Ring camera and you capture everything that goes on. So she had her car parked under the carport, and it was one night late, about 1 o'clock in the morning. Her and her boyfriend, they were asleep, and all of a sudden she got a notification on her phone that somebody was under her carport, and she turned on the camera, and she saw this young man, and he was trying to get in her car. And when he walked under her carport, the light came on, and he looked at the light and just grinned. You know, I mean, it just so brazen.
Right.
And so he couldn't get in her car, and she had the lock on her steering wheel, so he finally just left. But both of those things that happened, I think it just made my daughters think, wow, this is serious. You know, this is very serious.
Yeah. Specifically in Memphis, you know, the saying ignorance is bliss. You cannot be that way in terms of crime and, you know, self-awareness of when you're parking and being in certain parts of town. It's frustrating because you want to enjoy Memphis, but at the same time you have this like dark looming thought in the back of your head of always having to be, you know, aware.
Exactly.
So I understand that feeling. And if that feeling is inside the book, I can only imagine like kind of what anxiety, you know, it might bring as part of the story.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about what I really enjoyed in the book was you, at the start of the book and of every chapter, you have famous quotes. Mm-hmm. And so the start of the book actually has one of my favorite quotes, which refers to, you know, a man who plants a tree knowing he will not ever sit under its shade is, you know, discovered the pure meaning of life. And you've got quotes in there from Martin Luther King, Plato, I mean, very remarkable quotes. And I wanted to talk on why you selected those quotes and how does that drive the story and the chapter?
Well, you know, I love that quote too in the very beginning, because, you know, we're so connected, and you know, what good is it if we don't leave a good mark in the world for those coming behind us? You know, I mean, that is my heart's desire and passion, to leave good for not only my children but my grandchildren who come along, and just leave the world in a better place. And I think people who get that, they really do understand the meaning of life. But the quotes, I love the quotes, because sometimes a well-written quote can penetrate your heart and mind so deeply, and it can affect you. and it can change your life in a lot of ways. And I think that's my overall goal in my writing, is for people to critically think. Think critically. Don't just take someone else's opinion or just accept things as status quo, but ask questions. Why? Why are things like the way they are? Why is this crime like this in Memphis? What can we do about it? Is there anything that we can do about it? You know, I mean, do we just, you know, pack up in fear and move somewhere else and try to flee? Or do we stay and fight? Do we stay and fight for this community? And I mean, I feel, you know, that there's a warrior inside of me that wants to fight, because it's just not, it's not fair. Somewhere along the lines, people who commit crime, something went wrong in their life. And, you know, they have to come to that realization that they want to do something different. You know, I believe that firmly, that people, we come from different backgrounds and we don't always have a good life. We can't control the family that we're born into. We can't necessarily control the environment that we grow up in. And I mean, it could be good, it could be bad, it could be so many things in between. But at some point in every person's life, when they become an adult, they have to say, okay, it doesn't matter where I came from. This is my life now, and I can make happiness in my life. I can create something good. I can do something good in my life. I can make the world a better place. It's up to me. Rather than staying in a victim mentality like, you know, well, I had a hard time. I didn't have money, or my parents were divorced, or, you know, yes, those things may be true. But when you become an adult and you're out of school, out of college, whatever, you can do whatever you want in this world. It's possible. You can do anything that you want. You know, find out and really tap into those gifts inside of you and follow that. Follow your dreams. So back to those people who are in the life of crime, you know, can they change their mind? Can they change their mind and stop committing crime and start really doing something good? I don't know. I think it's possible.
Yeah, changing your choices, I think, is absolutely something.
It's possible, but you know, it's hard. And I tell you, those gang members and these thugs who are out there committing crime, they're scary individuals. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are scary individuals. So it's going to take something very unique to reach them, I believe.
Yeah. Paradigm shift for them. They're like really going to change your thinking.
Right.
Okay, so final question. Tell me what the future is for the books and the Nemesis story.
So yes, I do have part 2. I do have an ending in my head.
So we do have a series then.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Because you mentioned you left it on a cliffhanger.
Yes.
And so we want the end. So is there going to be part 2 and 3, or?
I'm thinking about that. I'm
okay.
trying to work all of that out in my mind right now. But the book will take you to a very unexpected place, and but it's sort of like allegory in a way. I don't want to give it away, but it's sort of like an allegory where you know, sometimes we've got to be pulled out of our existing environment, and so that we can face ourselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because as long as you're in a negative environment, it may be hard for you to have new thoughts or whatever. And so that's sort of a hint of where the book goes. But then I want to explore that area and try to bring the story to a very hopeful ending. So yeah, so I have a lot of other stories in my mind too. That
not in the Nemesis world, just in general.
Something completely different, and so I'm trying to get, you know, in the writing world where that's all I do because I love it. And, another thing, when you really find something that you love, you can spend hours doing it and it never feels like work.
Right.
And when I was writing this story, I could literally write for 14, 15, 16 hours at a time and not even know that all that time went by.
Yeah.
And so I love it. I mean, it's just, I'm so passionate about it, and I just can't wait to have more time to finish it,
Well, I'm so excited for you, and just being a published author, I think, is such an accomplishment, and I'm proud of you because this is very difficult, publishing a book and being an author. So tell us, where can we buy Nemesis?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
Right now, it's only on Amazon, and I do have a TikTok and an Instagram.
Yeah, tell us how to follow you then.
So it's at author Katherine Bailey. You can find me easily on there, but I'm in the process of getting a website up and just doing some more things, but it takes a little bit of time, to get all of that going. So I need lots of followers. And so that's where you'll see some updated information shortly.
Okay, great. So if you'll just keep us posted then, and then when we have the sequel, you can come on and talk about that. We would love it.
I would love to.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, ma'am.
This was our first one, and I was so excited that I saw you on Facebook as a local author, because there's not very many local authors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a rarity. So I appreciate you being on and talking about your book, Nemesis, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate y'all having me. It was great.
Absolutely. Thanks.
To support your local Collierville author, Katherine Bailey, by purchasing her novel, Nemesis, Life is But a Bad Dream, visit Amazon and search for Katherine Bailey, author, or by entering the title of the novel, Nemesis. You can also find her book as part of the Kindle Unlimited subscription. Book Talk is a monthly show produced by Collierville High School Dragon Media student journalists. To find more information on previous Book Talk guests or novels, visit colliervilledragonmedia.com.